I hope you all have a nice day. Wait, where are you going? Where are you going? We're just getting started. I was about to get to your content that you sent in. Um, like, so you sent in this story about a Canadian man who was fined like $55,000. It's about the Equality Act. Um, So I was like, wow, it sounds weird that that a guy would get fined $55,000 for misgendering a woman. So I decided to look into it. And basically, according to the tribunal ruling, Whatcott printed 1,500 flyers and distributed them around the Vancouver False Creek riding that Ogre was contesting as an NDP candidate. The flyer had a photo of Ogre, described her as a biological male, claimed she was promoting homosexuality and transvestism, and it went on to state that transsexuals were prone to sexually transmitted diseases and at risk of domestic violence, alcohol abuse, and suicide. And the flyer concluded, thankfully, Jesus Christ paid the price for your sin. You can turn to the merciful Christ and ask for forgiveness. And when the NDP come knocking at your door, you can tell them, I won't vote for them because you believe in God's definition of gender and marriage. So, again, this isn't just like saying, I'm sorry, I thought you were a man and you're actually a trans woman. And this person got fined like 25 or $55,000. What happened was he created 1,500 political pamphlets to attack a political opponent and basically spread lies that like trans people are more prone to domestic violence, STDs, alcohol abuse, and suicide. And that's pretty fucking weird and gross. So I'm guessing that probably let's see. Ogre, who lost the election by 400 votes, took the matter to the tribunal, claiming her human rights had been breached because the flyer was intended to discriminate and expose Ogre to hatred. I guess I can open this. It's from the Vancouver Sun. Whatcott claimed that he wrote in the flyer was an act of religious expression. In the ruling, Cosenow described the 5-day hearing during which Whatcott was wearing a white t-shirt with Ogre's face on it, and derogatory statements written underneath. In the hearing room for this complaint, we were witness to repeated, deliberate, and flagrant attacks on Miss Ogre, based on nothing more than a belief that her very existence is an affront. Adding, Whatcott continued to call Ogre he and Mr. during the course of the hearing, despite being told not to. So again, this isn't just a case of like, oh, I misgendered somebody. It's like being in contempt of court. It's like using it as a political attack on an opponent. On top of that, it's like all kinds of disrespectful, both to the courtroom and also to the individual. Yeah, it's a lot of libel. It opens her up to a lot of harassment from other people. Let's see. Cosenow noted there is a conflict in this case between Mr. Whatcott's religious belief that he should do everything in his power to stop a transgender woman from being elected to public office, and Miss Ogre's right, and the right of trans people more broadly to enjoy equal dignified participation in the political life of this province. The three-person tribunal ruled that Whatcott had discriminated against Ogre based solely on her gender. In my view, Cosenow wrote, the flyer is a modern version of a whites-only sign. It is an attempt to block the doors of government with a message that the political realm is for cisgender people only. So, yeah, it's trying to block her from participating in politics based on her gender. Or at least, based on her gender. It's like what the Mr. Whatcott believes her gender is, and what Miss Auger says her gender is. That's the 99 years of fulsome pen that for accidentally misgendering. All these people are nuts. Yeah, I mean, like, this isn't wild. Like, Ogre was cross-examined for 4 hours and 15 minutes by Whatcott's lawyer. Later in the hearing, she stated, I'm a transgender woman. People kill transgender women because of who we are. And they start with this, and it's impossible to tell whether this is the ramblings of a person who's likely to do that, or if it's not. After this flyer came out, I had to worry that what Mr. Whatcott looked like, but I also had to worry about other people who maybe gave him credibility. It's a vulnerable place already to be a candidate, and to be a transgender candidate is really vulnerable because people listen to outrageous things like this. Yeah, super cool stuff. Yeah, I don't think that this is the same as like, oh gosh, you've been fined because you said the wrong thing to a transgender person. Um or like I don't know, like this is the article that was initially sent to me from Pulpit and Pen. So you can kind of guess where this is going. Canadian man fined guilty of misgendering, fined $55,000, coming to America. Um, Basically talking about the Equality Act, which essentially just extends protection to transgender people and LGBTQ people. Excuse me. So yeah, it extends civil rights protections to queer folk. Let's see. It would prohibit discrimination in public places, discrimination in receiving services, discrimination in federally funded programs based on sex. Um, so no longer will a Christian be able to call a male person a male, nor a female person a female in public spaces if they identify different than their gender at birth. Transgenderism. It will be illegal to misgender a person. Last week, a Canadian man, Christian activist Bill Whatcott, was fined $55,000 for misgendering under similar Canadian law. Whatcott was convicted of a hate crime for telling Canadian people in a public place that males who are wearing female clothing are still male. The British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal that found him guilty also imposed an additional penalty. Bill Whatcott is no longer permitted to commit the same crime of misgendering. Yeah, so this isn't like accurate. Like, it makes it seem like his crime was like, oh, that's a man in a dress. No, he printed out fucking political flyers. He went around campaigning against her, and he like cross-examined her for 4 hours. It like misgendering her in court after the court asked him not to. Like, you understand, like, it is a free country. You can go into a courtroom and say fuck you, fuck you, fuck you to the judge, but the judge is then entitled to basically say, hey, you're in contempt of court. Your free speech has limits, even under American free speech laws. All right. And the other link was to this. Hawaiian Representative Tulsi Gabbard introduces bill called Protect Women's Sports Act. Would clarify Title IX protections to be based on biological sex, which would impact transgender athletes participating in athletic programs for women and girls. I feel like this would probably also impact a lot more things. Title IX protections trans people. Let's see here. Title IX protects all students who experience sexual violence, irrespective of the gender of the survivor or alleged perpetrators. Oh, here we go. Request of educators and school administrators, the U.S. Department of Education and Justice issued landmark guidance clarifying the rights that hundreds of thousands of transgender students have under Title IX and schools' obligations to respect them. In 2017, Trump administration withdrew the guidance, leaving many students. Okay, let's see. Didn't create new rights for transgender students. Rather, it clarified transgender students' rights under Title IX, an existing federal civil rights law. Although the 2016 guidance has been withdrawn, the law hasn't changed. Transgender students are still protected by Title IX, which ensures that they have rights to equal access to educational opportunities, including access to single-sex spaces and activities consistent with their gender identity. Title IX prohibits sex-based discrimination in education, as many courts, including federal appeals courts, have recognized. Laws prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sex prohibit discrimination against transgender people, meaning that transgender students have a right to equal access to educational opportunities under Title IX. Among other things, the law requires schools to respect transgender students' gender identities with regards to dress codes, names, pronouns, and access to single-sex facilities, including restrooms. Let's see. From gender-based harassment and bullying. Awesome. Important framework to ensure protections of transgender. Okay. So basically, if you change the wording of Title IX to like biological sex, I don't think that fundamentally changes the right, like what these protections are based off of. I guess I would have to read it more. Let's see here. Okay. Title IX of Education Amendments of 1972 in athletes, sex shall be determined on the basis of biological sex as determined at birth by a physician. To provide for the purposes of determining compliance, sex shall be determined on the basis of biological sex as determined at birth by a physician. Let's see. Is amended by taking the end of the following. It shall be a violation of subsection A for a recipient of federal funds who operates, sponsors, or facilitates athletic programs or activities to permit a person whose biological sex at birth is male to participate in an athletic program or activity that is designated for women or girls. Wait, so this only applies to trans women? It doesn't apply to trans men? This is strange. Yeah, Tulsi is a TERF. I can tell. Yeah. Let's see. All your fears were debunked in the HB 500 interim ruling, found that forcing a trans woman to participate on a men's team, equivalent to gender identity conversion effects, which every major medical association has been found to be dangerous and unethical. Let's take a look at this thread. The HB 500 interim... Oh gosh, I didn't want to do that. 500 interim ruling... found that forcing a transgender woman to participate on a men's team would be forcing her to be cisgender, which is associated with adverse mental health outcomes. Participating in sports on teams that contradicts one's gender identity is equivalent to gender identity conversion efforts, which every major medical association has found to be dangerous and unethical. As such, the Act's categorical exclusion of transgender women and girls entirely eliminates their opportunity to participate in school sports and also subjects all cisgender women to unequal treatment simply to play sports, while all men in Clark and generally equal athletic opportunities. The judge further ruled in HB 500, third, it appears transgender women have not and could not displace cisgender women in athletics to a substantial extent, although the ratio of males to females is roughly 1-to-1, less than 1% of the population is transgender. Presumably, this means approximately 0.5% of the population is made up of transgender females. It is inappropriate to compare the potential displacement allowing approximately half the population to compete with cisgender women with any potential displacement of 0.5% of the population could cause cisgender women. It appears untenable that allowing transgender women to compete on women's teams would substantially displace female athletes. Let's see. Let's see what this is talking about. HB 500. Oh, okay. This is what she's talking about. While only an initial victory, the law will be suspended while litigation is pending, which will prevent irreparable harm to the plaintiffs as well as other transgender female athletes. Let's see. U.S. District Judge David Nye has granted a preliminary injunction against the enforcement of Idaho's discriminatory anti-transgender law, HB 500, finding that the state's interest was not justifiable but rather an invalid interest of excluding transgender women and girls from sports, women's sports entirely. While only an initial victory, the law will be suspended. Let's see. Yeah. Another discriminatory anti-transgender law, HB 509, were motivated by a desire for transgender exclusion, not related to any actual legitimate policy goal. Let's see. Okay. I would have to go more in depth on this to figure out if what Christie is talking about plays out, but it seems like this is all pretty yeah. Anyway, the bottom line is we've gone over the science behind this, and essentially the science does not say that transgender women cannot compete against cisgender women. That's the state. That's the state of all of the existing science on trans issues at the moment. Okay, there still needs to be more research done, but the existing science does not say that trans women have an overwhelming advantage against cis women. And it does not find that young trans people have an overwhelming advantage against young, cis women. It does not find any of these things. There are broad generalizations that can be made, but as applicable to athletes, it doesn't seem to make a notable amount of difference. But is the science on your side, and would you like to see how my hair would fare in a blizzard? Wait, I don't know what that means, a ghost. I don't know what